Before Rav Shlomo starts, I just want to first of all welcome everyone. And I think everyone who's here, I don't think Rav Shlomo needs an introduction. But I just want to say the following. So I'm somebody who, Baruch Hashem, has, I try to focus on my Hebrew birthday, but today happens to be my English birthday. And my husband, like when he realized Rav Shlomo was coming, he was like, I really wish I was the one to arrange it, because that's just like the perfect birthday present for you, to have Rav Shlomo come and speak in our house. But Baruch Hashem, it's a big birthday. And in Pirkei Avos, 50 is Itzah. And first of all, not only for the personal kesher that our family has with Rav Shlomo and his family for so many years, B'chazei Hashem, it's mamish amat nasninam, but for the hundreds, if not thousands, of etzos that he has given me personally and the many conversations that we've had, but from his Torahs, that the hundreds and thousands of hours that I've spent listening to his Torahs over the years, and the etzos that I've gotten from his Torahs that has, gone directly into my neshama. But Rav Shlomo is really the one that has introduced me to tzaddikim in this world and in the next world, and it's those etzos from those tzaddikim and their Torahs that Baruch Hashem has become, not only from Rav Shlomo's Torah but from their Torahs, Baruch Hashem, a guiding light in my life, and I have endless hakar satov to him for that. And if there's any Esau that I can give those of you sitting here today, if you haven't yet already, it's to listen to Rav Shlomo and his Torah, because it will bring you lots of Eitzos in your life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Happy birthday. Amen. Amen. Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for coming. And this is a very, very, very fast trip. It's a beautiful short visit here to this area of the world, as my brother celebrated his son's bar mitzvah last night. So it's really a family simcha. I got in a few hours before Shabbos, and I'm leaving in a few hours. And I'm here with my mother, which is a big schutz, which is really special. Mazel tov, Bubby. And it's your first time here. So this is like you're coming to like my home away from home. So that's a very special thing. It's a very strange thing to be so far away from physical home and then walk into this bayis that everyone feels at home when you walk in here, especially me and my wife who have spent Shabbos here together. So I just want to give this home a bracha to be a continued shliach neman of Yerushalayim, because that's what this home is. And Bifrat to Zahava, on her, we call it the soon-to-be birth. It was already, or it's going to?
Today is my English birthday.
Right, but the
Yud Gimel Tevis.
Yud Gimel Tevis. So you're in the Chol HaMoed now. From now until Yud Gimel Tevis, you're in the Chol HaMoed birthday season, and it's a schus to learn with Zahava for so many years now. And Zahava's basically, she's part of, I know she's an anchor here, but she's really an anchor of our Kehillah as well, in Efrat. So it feels at home. We wish you brachas ad b'li dai. Ad b'li dai, and nachas from, you should give nachas to your children and grandchildren, and they should continue to give you nachas as well, Be'ezer Hashem. I could go on with Hakdamas right now for probably half an hour, literally, with Hakdama after Hakdama, because my mind, I have so much I would love to share right now in the few minutes that we have together. It's so much. Hanukkah is so much. And right now, I want to start and end in the same place, and that's Eretz Yisrael. Because right now, as we're sitting here, they're starting to light the menorah right now in Eretz Yisrael. My wife and children are lighting right now in Eretz Yisrael. And right now, there are probably like a few, not a few, probably about like 40 or 50, 18 and 19-year-old boys and girls that are standing on the mishmar, guarding my family right now to be able to light the menorah as well. And they're not just doing that for them there. We all know that those holy chayalim and chayalot are doing it for us here as well. It's the same shmirah. So I want to dedicate the learning for their shmira, for their hatzlacha, for their safety. And also I want to dedicate the learning Leilui Nishmas, Lialdina, Bas Ephraim. The Neshama should have an Aliyah. And I also have a greater Hagdama than any of what I said right now, because we are living in the greatest dream that we have no intentions of waking up from at all. And that is that we built our shul in Eretz HaKodesh. We built our community in Efrat. And you say under a chuppah by Chassan and Kali, you say that the bracha is v'hiskin lamimeno binyan adei ad, that the building should be everlasting. But we always say that that could be a very boring bracha, because there are a lot of marriages that are everlasting, but the only thing basically about the marriage is that every year on the anniversary, they just mention the fact that they're not divorced. But it's a binyan adei ad, but the building didn't crumble, right? So when we say binyan adei ad, that the act of binyan should be adei ad, that the act of building should be adei ad, should be everlasting. Now, why do I feel, before I even have the chutzpah to look into any of the words of the tzaddikim and share anything about the Yantiv that's coming up, is because this is, for me, a very simple thing, and I don't only say this when I'm here. Be'emes, I don't say this. You could, if you want to listen to what Zahava said, and then listen to anything I've said, you'll hear probably the same thing wherever. I was just telling my father in the car after Shacharis. Almost exactly 20 years ago, I came here for the first time. I had no idea what 5 towns meant. I didn't know what that, never heard of it. I was never here. As far as I know, I was never here. And through a bunch of different malachim and shluchim, befrat, a person, his name is Zev Gans, Azriel and Sarah Gans' oldest child. Somehow it worked out that I came here back then to open for Chaim David, who came to do a concert, Motzei Shabbos, the Shabbos before Shabbos Hagadol, 20 years ago, in Young Israel, Lawrence Cedarhurst. And when I walked into the Beis Medrash at 6:20 a.m. in the morning, I'll never forget it, Matzasi es shahava nafshi, my eyes saw a torch of light that has continued to guide me every single day of my life. And it's only, I feel this matnas, you talk about matnas chinam, I feel this, Hanukkah, chinam, undeserved gifts, unworthy, this treasure chest of undeserved gifts I'll never ever know. I mean, I know it's probably schus of us that we had the schus to ever get into music, just so that I could come here and be in the Beis Medrash on that Friday morning when a bunch of about 50, 60 people were crying over Hachsharas Avrechim from the Piasetzner Rebbe with Rebbe. And everything that I have the schus of hopefully doing with our chevra and the shul that we built, and the tefillah, that it's really not just a binyan that lasts, not just an everlasting building, but that the act of binyan is adei ad, that the act of actual growth is adei ad. It's only because I'm listening to my Rebbe. He'll say that's not true, but I'm telling you it's true. It's absolutely true. So I have an infinite, ein sof hakaras hatov to Rebbe, and again, you'll hear me say this, bemet, not here, not only here, and everywhere, and that we should all, like Rebbe ends every single time I've ever heard him share and give over Divrei Elokim Chaim, we should all end up together in Yerushalayim Habnuya, Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach. And until that happens, all of us together, and I checked this with my wife, it's legit, you are all invited to our Shabbos table.
Coming next month.
Don't threaten. Don't threaten. I'm actually very happy. It's not, this is what I mean. Like, I want to see the rest of the hands saying, I'm coming next month, I'm coming next week. You'll come. You'll come. It's a simcha. It's like, why would I say, like, why am I thinking about it in terms of a wedding? about Binyan Adei Ad, because it's like this, it's a Shana Rishona. We moved in right before Pesach, right? Shabbos HaGadol, yeah.
Yes.
So everything this year, right? Everything this year is like Bikurim. Everything's a first. Like every single moment, every single Yontiv, every Parsha, every date on the calendar is like a Bikurim. It's the first, it's the beginning of something. So there's such an excitement, and my chevra there are mevakshin. This is chevra that if you have to, like, for the sake of articulating what type of people are they, it's mainly chevra that made aliyah physically one time and keep on making aliyah every single day. It's chevra that realize and understand that the games only really begin once you come home. That's really the type of chevra that we have. And I've only been gone I've just only been gone for 3 days. I miss them so much. I got so many reports over this last Shabbos. And it's not a shul, it's not a center, it's a besora. I heard a voice, I forget in the name of who. Actually, I remember where I heard this voice. It was Motzei Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat, as everyone knows, the Ptira of the Frierdiker Rebbe, right? The 6th Lubavitch Rebbe. And a year later was the day that the Rebbe became Rebbe, big day. Many years ago, I was in the Old City for the Yud Shvat, and I was walking past the Fabrengen, and some Chabadsker who definitely was about 30 shots too many of vodka grabbed me, and he looked at me and he said, "Ani yoda ma ta choshev alai. Od meshichist metumtam, nachon?" That means, I know what you think of me. You probably think I'm another stupid meshichist, right? It's like, let me tell you something. בוא נגיד לך משהו. אתה יודע למה, את מי אנחנו מחשיבים כחי? Who do we consider someone that's alive? Anyone that has a besora to share with the world. If you have a besora, if you have something to share with the world, you're chai. How do we learn this? Because it says about Adam and Chava, v'hayu lebasar echad. That means, the Pashat Pshat is, they were one, they knew each other, they were one, they became one, right? But it's that by being together, they had a basar, and besora comes from the same word. Basar, the flesh, they had a besora to share with the world. That's what made them alive. So obviously, the or of Shiva Sayamim, the or from the Baal Shem HaKadosh, and the besora, that this kehillah has spread all over the world and continues to do so every single second, has been the torch for so many of us. And we have a besora. We have a besora to share that it's possible. You could dream, you could go big as long as you don't move a second away from the tzaddikim, and you could hopefully be zocher to build this kind of bias, a binyan adei ad in Eretz Yisrael. And so many people we're talking all the time with different couples and different families every single day about making the move, trying to make the move. How could it be? Should it be? Should not be? And all the questions, all the relevant questions, all the legitimate questions. But when you're dealing with a besora, there's something to share with the world. There's a besora. There's something like Eliyahu Navi, Harachman, Vishlach lanu Eliyahu Navi zechot v'yivaseh lanu besoros tovos. You have something to share with the world. And you have it with so many chevra that are so plugged into a besora. They're all Zahava's best friends, by the way. Just you could ask her about them. This is the type of chevra that Hashem blessed us to grow with. So that's why I said I could be'emes, such little time, this is a thing that I could really start talking now and finish in Shavuos, maybe really what I want to say about the schus that Hashem gave us right now. But the roots of it all happened for me here, in this makom. So I have infinite hakaras hatov to the Ribono Shleilim, and to Rebbe and his family, and to all of the chevra here for being part of the torch that is reaching the four corners of the world, and it should continue to reach and reach and reach ad bias gol tzedek mehir b'yaminu amen. We started in Yerushalayim, we started in Eretz Yisrael, we're going to end in Eretz Yisrael as well. Could Hanukkah really be this simple? Could it really be this simple? Think about it. All you have to do to be Yotzei Hanukkah, all you have to do to to be Yotzei Chanukah is to make sure that for half an hour your game is on, more or less. It's to make sure you light the candles in the right time. And even if it's not in the right time, you could do it later if you have to. And they have to stay lit for a certain amount of time. But be'etzem, that's it. That's all that's all there is to it, nachon? And there's a part of us that says if it's that easy, it can't be that real. Or it can't be that holy. If I'm not sweating, if I'm not really prepared, if I'm not really plugged in, if I didn't really learn all the kavanas of the menorah, if I don't really know the secrets of Chanukah, then mazeh, what's Chanukah? Last week I sat with a prominent Rav in Eretz Yisrael, and he said to me the following, I've been thinking about it all week. He said to me, Chanukah, I've been doing serious tshuva every Chanukah the last 5 years. I said, it's interesting. All the Torahs I read speak about how on Chanukah there's no tachnun, and you never see even the most kalt liktvak, you don't see them by the menorah doing Asham Bagadnu. I think, as far as I know, I never saw anyone do that, right? So what do you mean that Chanukah is the time of tshuva? So he said to me that when he started learning Pnimius, he started going deep inside, what he would do is he brought every sefer he ever got from his bar mitzvah and his chasana to the menorahs, piled them up on here. If any kid would be mafriya for a second during the lighting, or his wife something was left on the stove or in the oven, everything was a distraction. And he always felt that the Ramban, what the Ramban says about every person lighting the menorah is like the Kohen Gadol going into the Kodesh Kodashim. Everything was a disturbance. Everything messed it up. Anything, the smallest distraction, ruined it for him, till he realized that it wasn't just ruining it for him, he brought the whole house down. So he said, for the last 4 or 5 years, once he realized that his inyanim of how Chanukah has to be was the opposite of anything calm and anything simchadik, he doesn't bring a sefer to the menorah. Maybe brings just the brachas, or it's maybe like, the Bnei Yisachar has a tefillah, the Naim Elimelech has tefillah, maybe like one tefillah. And then he sits back and he says, I'm not going to use this for anything. Ela lir'osam bilvad. But to see who? The candles? You think Hashem just wants you to see your candles? Yeah, Hashem wants to see your candles and mitzvahs ner Chanukah, ishu beso, the candles that are walking around your home. Ela lir'osam bilvad. And he says once he made that switch in his head, that's really what Chanukah is about, he says, he would never say it publicly, he said, that's Or HaGanuz, that's the concealed light that was concealed from the 6 days of creation, 7 days of creation. Only then Chanukah opened up for him. Now this is something that we always get stuck in so much. And we have to understand, really, could it be this simple? Could it really be that this is what life's all about? Could it be that Chanukah really is all about this inyan of just making sure that I light and being present with the lighting? Could that really be it? I said a Torah like this a few weeks ago, and I'm still working through it, but maybe you'll tell me what you think. It says that when Avram Avinu, when we learn Torahs like this, where we live, it's really otherworldly, because when we learn about Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, I always tell the Chaver, hey, look outside, maybe it was right there. Mama Rachel's buried about 4 minutes behind my living room. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, all the Avos and Imos, Boaz and Rus, David HaMelech may have very well written Tehillim in the mikvah of our shul. It could very well be. These are not Dvarim, I'm not saying Dvarim Ba'alma, this literally is Kipshuta. So the story of that we learned a few weeks ago about Avram Avinu and the Malachim coming to greet him in Parshas Vayera struck a really deep chord this year, because we said a Torah like this. Avram Avinu has to run after the bakar. You all know the famous story. Vel bakar ratz Avram, and he wants to go shecht something for the malachim, for the 3 guests. So the bakar, how do you say bakar? The cattle ran away from him, right? And the Midrash tells us he was running. After the cattle entered into a certain cave, Avram Avinu walks into this cave and he hears a voice that says, it's not enough that we have to be embarrassed from the Ribono Shleilim. we still have to be embarrassed from you too. Whose voice was it? It was Adam HaRishon. It was Maras HaMachpelah. The Baka revealed to him, like the mitzvah of Achnasas Orchim, revealed to Avram Avinu, Maras HaMachpelah. What is that voice? It's not enough that we're embarrassed from you. We have to be embarrassed from the Eibishter too and from you. What was that all about? So over there, the tzaddikim say it's that there was still no one that fixed the first chet, which was achila, the sin of eating. And what did that mean? It means that how many years passed since then? We know. Kimat 2,000 years, right? So Avram Avinu hears from them for 2,000 years. No one fixed this inyan of how to eat. So he goes back and you see, first he serves them milchiks, then he serves them fleishiks. There's a Dvar Torah, Sarah Ba'ohel, everything's tzanua, everything's modest. And Avram Avinu thinks, wow, this is probably tikkun achila, being so holy, eating, kadat v'chadin, kosher, quiet, v'zeh. And then the angels come and say, let me tell you something, that's not the whole fixing of the Chet Adam HaRishon, because ki be'itzchak yikareh lecha, you're going to have a kid. And Be'ezer Hashem, the kid is not going to sit there. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Yashel. This is not going to be what the Suda is going to look like at all. Alavai, that'd be great. That's not what it's going to look like. What is it going to look like? Leave it to your imagination. What it's going to look like to sit by the holiest kid in the world, the first kid born Jewish, Yitzchak. However, it's not going to be all calm but Avram Avinu, you want to do a tikkun of achila, of how we eat? The tikkun of achila, of how we eat, is what are you freaking out about around the table? What are you freaking out about? So the tikkun, really, of chet eitz hadas, came with the besora that you're going to have children, and the child within you that can't sit there calm and be so zoned in and focused, like some of my chevra from LA that have spent times in the mountains in Malibu and deep, serene meditations that take them to Olamos Elyonim. Ma pitom. What I'm saying is obviously based on long Torahs from Rav Kluger and other tzaddikim as well, about how to come to, Rabbi Akiva Eger, the famous story, how when he would come to the Seder table, I think Rebbe said this many times, I've heard this from a lot of tzaddikim. The first thing he did when he came to the Seder table, the mothers and the wives don't like this one so much, but this one, he comes to the Seder table, he sees it looked, mamish like this, and everything was so mesudar, and everyone worked so hard, and he said, anachnu b'nei chayr, I'm not a slave to anything, and he took the tablecloth and he flipped it out, and the whole thing went, he's like, you see, and the wife's looking at it, So I'm not saying figuratively necessarily, but in our minds and our hearts, the greatest hachana we could have for Chanukah to actually be lichtig, to actually be with simcha, is to remember that if Chazal really thought that for the Or HaGanuz to enter us, we'd have to fast for 3 days, do siyum manzar, and know the kavanas of the Arizal in order to really taste Chanukah, they would have said so. But they didn't. We would have a Masechta called Masechet Chanukah. Have you found that Masechet before? Doesn't exist. Do you know how much Gemara there is on Masechet on Chanukah? There's about 2.5 blot in Masechta Shabbos. And what does the whole Gemara talk about? Mitzvahs ner Chanukah, ish ubeisa. That's it. Chanukah is about a person and their home. So first of all, I want to give a bracha for Shalom Bayis to everyone, because when you don't feel at home in your own home, it's mamish Gehenim. So first of all, we should all feel at home in our home. Eretz Yisrael, Yidden should feel at home in their home. And no one should feel like they have to go somewhere else for their home. But a very clear hadracha we have in order to feel at home in our home is the following few lines from Rabbi Nachman Tzchus Yagin Aleinu that I want to learn with you. Usually I'm sorry, I should have sent something in. Usually we learn with sheets all the time, with Mara Makoma, so you have to forgive me. I'm just going to read a few lines from Rabbi Nachman. This is in Likutei Moharan, Tinyana Pevav. So it's the 86th teaching in the second chelek of Likutei Moharan. And there's another pilgrimage that is happening this week to Uman, because one of the times of the year that the Hasidim would go to be with Rabbi Nachman was Shabbos Chanukah. And I still have chevra that even though they're going to Romania, Poland, or however they're going to get there, they're going to get there. Be'ezer Hashem, when this Meshigas ends, it should be Bekar of Mamish with Russia and Ukraine. And all the chevrelach, whatever they have to do to figure it out and be done with, we're going to be relaunching our trips to the Ukraine that we've been doing for many years now. So Hava's been on a few of them. You were also there on one of them. I don't have my glass on. I think other chevra may have been. Anyway, it's a very special inyan to also, that's for another time, but to mention the tzaddik's name, Erev Yantiv, is always, always, always very special. It says the Rebbe like this, Likutei Moharan Tinyana Pevavda, She'al Yedei She'ha'olam Hem Miktane Amana, Al Ken Hem Tzrichim L'Tainis, Dehainu Avodos Kashas. The Rebbe says like this, when people are of small emuna, ktane amana, small faith. A person of small faiths, tzarich leta'anit. They need to fast in order to feel that their game is on. Dehainu avodot kashot. That means hard sweat and labor, working really hard. This is for a person that's called ktane amana, ktane emuna. Where do we see that lashon in the Torah? Ktane amuna. It's not in the Torah, it's in Rashi. Where do we see this lashon of ktane emuna in the Torah? So by Noach it says about him, Af Noach miktane amuna haya. Rashi says there in the beginning of Parshas Noach. And everyone's asking, it's such a crazy thing. Noach ish tzaddik. The Torah says about him that he's an ish tzaddik. Rebbe used to always say, I'm sure he still says it, it's amazing how whenever anyone wants to show that they know anything about Pnimius, they go on Noach bashing drushes. You know what I mean? I have to show, I know that Rashi, and I know how really Noach was really, not so helig. And then stick to the pshat. Noach ish tzaddik tamim b'darasav. But Rashi says there, Noach also fell into this category. Of what? Ktane emuna. Small faith. It says, mamin ve'eno mamin. That's the lashon of Rashi. He believed and he didn't believe. So I heard Rav Shlomo explain it like this: Miktane amana means, small faith means that if you ask me if I believe in God, the answer is 100,000,000%. Mamin. What's the ve'eno mamin? Do you think the Ribbon Shalom believes in you? I don't know if that's really shayach. Maybe, maybe not. But I believe in God. You think the Eibishter wants people that just believe in Him and don't believe that Hashem believes in them? That's Ktane Emuna. If I don't believe that Hashem believes in me, I'm going to go to a place, what the Rebbe says here, the Hainu Avodot Kashot. I remember there was a guy when I was just talking about this with the Chaver in Eretz Yisrael. There was this Tamim Bal Tshuva that had just came to our yeshiva when around the same tkufa that I mentioned before, about 20 years ago, in the yeshiva in Efrat by Rabbi Bravender. There was this beautiful yid that he was silent, almost always silent. Besides, like, a few times a week he would talk a lot, and we would see him eating, but during the week we never saw him eating, and he would barely talk. And he was very quiet, we were dressed very, very, verfrummt. And we didn't know what his story was till we realized that he had, the tshuva that he did to bring him into Yiddishkeit had nothing to do with the tikkun of this. So he ended up with what we call gefilte fish handshakes. Do you know what that is? No? It's not so big here? You know what gefilte fish handshake is? Okay, Rav Kook has a Torah on this in Orsak Tshuva, a very famous one, that when a person does Tshuva, somewhat like Chalila Nebuch, when a person has to go through radiation or chemo. And what does chemo, what do those tipulim do? They kill all the cells, the good and the bad. So when a person does tshuva, so even if they had any chiyus in them, even the good chiyus in them, together with the bad chiyus, everything gets shechted, everything gets, fallen. So you have people that in college, these were like, I don't know, these guys were on the wrestling team, whatever. Some Chabad Shliach found them on a Friday afternoon, brought them for Shabbos, game over. Their name used to be Kevin. Now it's suddenly Yerachmiel Shimshon, right? These guys have nothing, there's no Zecher anymore to Kevin. Now, part of Kevin should not have a Zecher, 100%. I'm not saying all of Kevin should have come into Yerachmiel Shimshon, right? But basically, these are guys that, like, you know, when you met them, when they were Kevin, you gave them a hand. There was a hand there, right? Then they become, like, very, very frank, gefilte fish handshakes. It's like, I had one on Shabbos. On Shabbos, someone gave me a gefilte fish handshake. I couldn't believe it. It's like this. What's a gefilte fish handshake? It's like, you don't believe the Rebbeinu Shalom believes in you. That you still have koyach. So everything is like, you're just a piece of rubber, nebuch. Back to this guy in yeshiva, he was a gefilte fish handshake, Baal Tshuva. And he was doing Bahab, he was fasting. He wasn't just doing Bahab. He was doing Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet Hey Vav. Okay, he was fasting the whole week, and he barely used to speak. Then one day we caught him there was one big snowstorm, my first year in yeshiva, which I know over here, that's no big thrill. By us, that's like Mashiach came in Eretz Yisrael. And we were living up with the yeshiva was on a mountain. We caught him doing Gilgulei Sheleg. Tikkun Arizah, whatever, not to get into it so much, but basically, being very cold in the snow for a few ups and downs, right? I took him aside, I said, what are you doing? He's like, you don't know what I did in college. Like, okay, but why are you rolling around naked in the snow right now? You know? And how come you don't eat? And how come you don't talk? He says, you don't know what I did in college. It's like, you know what? I don't need to know what you did in college, but I have a feeling that somehow the light of the Baal Shem Tov kind of was like not exactly part of the way that you are introduced, your chinuch, your education of the Ribono Shel Olam. Why? Because people of small faith, tzrichim letainis, in order for them to feel good about themselves, they have to fast. Dehainu avodot kashot. Hard work, hard sweat and labor. And the Rebbe goes through a whole Torah here. It's long, deep, and definitely not enough time for this morning.
It's interesting because we say every morning the opposite of Tane Emunah is Rabba Emunah Secha.
Rabba Emunah Secha.
Hashem believes in us. And that's how we wake up every morning, like the exact opposite.
They didn't teach them that in Tshuva 101. They didn't get to that parsha. Nachon? Ki bevadai yadua, the Rebbe says, she'efshar la'avod Hashem yisbarach bechol davar. Of course, it's known. You could serve the Ribono Shel Olam through anything. There's a famous Torah from the Maggid of Mizrich. I always feel like he gets the bad rap. Not the bad rap, but Yutas Kislev became so much about the Alter Rebbe's release from prison, even though it all started because the Maggid, his Rebbe, told him 26 years prior to the Yutas Kislev, this is our Yantiv, it's his Hilula, it's his Ptira. It's a famous teaching, it's Shoshana's favorite teaching, about the Maggid of Mizrich. We say every morning, Mala ha'aretz kinyanecha. Kinyan, to make an acquisition, to acquire. The Maggid says a chassid believes, Mala ha'aretz, the world, our life, our experience in this world is filled with different ways of making a kinyan on elokus, on godliness. The Rebbe is saying over here, בוודאי ידוע שאפשר לעבוד השם יתברך בכל דבר. כי אין הקדוש ברוך הוא בא בטרוניה עם בריאותיו. The Ribono Shel Olam does not come to us with, the way I like to say this is that the way the Ribono Shel Olam comes to us is not in a manner of saying, you know, for you and I to feel close again, it's got to really hurt you. And I don't even know if you're going to make it. But try your hardest. Even though that's the voice that we have inside. The Ribono Shel Olam is not going to, the way that we have to understand this voice is not, the Ribono Shel Olam doesn't come to us and say, listen, do you have another chance this Hanukkah, first night? What's it going to be like? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be like another just Latka party? Or is it going to be Mamish Beis HaMikdash? So when you get into that zone, you get all intense. And then you take it out on the first kid that comes and has a shayla on the dreidel. And you're like, you're bothering me with Beis HaMikdash. K'tanei Amuna. K'tanei Amuna means I don't believe what the Ramban said. I don't believe that when I sit with Ish Ubeisa and I light the menorah, and hopefully I have a few good moments of having consciousness that I am right now with the Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash, I don't know how long it'll last. I don't believe that that could actually be what it's all about. But the moment that I begin to believe that that's what it's all about, the simcha I begin to feel is what we titled the shir, a calming simcha. It's a simchas margoa, which is what Shabbos is all about. Not menuchas aroi, menuchas margoa. On Shabbos we say Shabbos is a menucha that really makes me inside, my bones, my atzamot are calm. It's a real calming feeling. You know, recently we reached the end of Perek Hey in Achsharas Avrechim. We've been learning Achsharas Avrechim for over a year now. We're taking our time with it. No rushing. No rushing with it. Bnei Machshava Tova, it took us about 70-something shiurim to get through. Bnei Machshava Tova is basically, you know how thin that sefer is, right? So Achsharas Avrechim, you're learning here Bnei Machshava Tova? No? Not yet. But you did. Well, the men did years ago. Anyway, there's Benos Machshava Tova now. You could, it's all there. In Achsharas Avrechim, we learned something by the Piasetzner Rebbe, Hashem Yikom Damo, that saved our davening. It saved all our davenings 2 weeks ago. The Rebbe says, how do you know if your davening was really on fire or not? If you come out of a tefillah and you're certain, this was Kodesh Kodashim, this was fire. The Rebbe says, then that probably was nothing. That probably wasn't anything. He says, how do you know if your tefillah was really made up of hislavus and hisrakshus, that it really was kadat v'chadin, that it really did something in your neshama? He says, if there were harim and there were amakim, if there were mountains during your davening, and you also descended to valleys during your davening. If you felt like there was so much light, and during the tefillah you also forgot if you're on v'ahavta or v'hayayim shamoa. Not that it ever happened to anyone in this room, but if it may have. Or we always say the famous, embarrassing moment when it's Shabbos, and you're davening with so much kavanah, and then suddenly you catch yourself going like this during Shmoneh Esrei. Ever happened to? Don't raise your hand, but you know what right? You're davening, it's one of Shmoneh Esrei of Shabbos, and you're going like this, and then you realize it, so then you start to do this whole movement of you're checking to see your heartbeat, and then you put your hand in your coat, or the Rebbe says, the Piaseczner Rebbe says, if you had a tefillah like that was made of very high moments, and also moments that you got lost, you lost track, he says, then you had a chance to really be someone that's an ish mitlahev, an ish mitragesh. That Torah was a Yetzias Mitzrayim for almost all of us. When we heard the Piaseczner Rebbe Schlisti Agen Aleinu say that to us was like, oh my God, if the Rebbe says that. So I want to say the same thing about the Hanukkah candles as well. The Hanukkah candles can be the greatest moment in our lives, or it could be the greatest michshol for the opposite of Shalom Bayis. K'tanei Emunah over here means that if Hanukkah is one big bolt of fire, then it's real, and if it's not, it's nothing. Rabbi Nachman says, "Ze lo inyan shelanu." He calls that actually kilkul emunah. He says, then your emunah is mekulkal. You made the Ribono Shel Olam into this, the equivalent of a gefilte fish handshake. Sorry for the expression, but you took such a big Ribono Shel Olam, and you made him sound so irrelevant and so small, and only appearing in your life when everything is perfect. You know, there's such a letter from Rav Kook that he wrote to his son, Rav Tzvi Yehuda. We say this letter all the time. Here it's not a problem because here's the tikkun. Rebbe has taken this and flipped it over. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But sometimes you can hear people speak about the Ribono Shel Olam. Hashem seems so pathetic and so small and so irrelevant. So Rav Kook wrote to his son, Rav Tzvi Yehuda, and he says to him, you know, you're going to go out into the world. You're going to meet a lot of people and a lot of Rabbanim that are, so to speak, Shluchei Derachman. They're Kivyachol, representing Hashem. And the way they speak about Hashem is going to sound so small and so pathetic. So he said, the Pasuk in Azinu says, Ki Shem Hashem Ekra, Havu, what's the next word? Godel Elokeinu. He says, when you call out in God's name, He's supposed to make the Ribbon Shleilim seem so big. And so big doesn't mean so frightening. So big means so understanding. So knowing what He was doing when He thought of creating you and I, that He knew there'd be mountains and there'd be valleys. A small God is only there when I'm on the top of the mountain and I don't have any impure thought. So he said to his son, you're going to hear people talk about the Ribbon Shleilim, Ki Shem Hashem Ekra, Havu Katnus Lelokenu. When they speak about Hashem, it's going to seem so small. It's going to be Ktane Emuna. Such small Emuna. So you know what happens to people that are open to the notion of how we learned the Piasetzner and how understanding that Ribbon Shleilim believes in us? What happens to their Yiddishkeit? Mala haaretz kinyanecha. The world is filled with different moments and different experiences of acquiring things. There's a famous Torah, I forget who it was. I think it's Alexander Torah. And it says like this. Uminoisar kankanim nasanes lashashanim. From the leftover oil came the miracle. So everyone thinks that the Yevanim didn't notice that there was a little bit of leftover oil in one of the jugs, right? They think that they somehow skipped over it, and we found it, and we made something gewalt out of it. Uminoisar kankanim, and what was left in the oil, what was left that was found, they did see it. The Yevanim did see that oil. But they looked at that tiny amount of oil and they said, nothing can be done with this. I'll tell you a mashal without mentioning names or members of family, but I have a close relative, who when they were in high school, the guidance counselor saw, okay, you have a little bit of oil, but don't try to apply to college or anything like that. You're just going to set yourself up for failure. And don't have too much for your benefit. Don't aspire too much because it's going to hurt when you fall. This person is leading two very, very successful institutions in Am Yisrael today, because somehow there was a chashmanai that came into her heart and had her understand that emunah means that Hashem believes in me, even with the naisar kankanim, even with a little bit of oil that's found in me. Umi naisar kankanim, says this tzaddik, dafka, from what the world looked at and said, from this little bit of oil, nothing can really happen. It's from that leftover oil, nasa nes lasheshanim. It's from that actually the miracles in my life happen. And I want to talk about, just for a minute, what the miracles are. You know what the miracles are? It's a miracle if a frum, heilig, Hamish family can sit around the licht, can sit around the menorah, and not get freaked out if it's not Beis HaMikdash. That's the nes. Not that everyone sits in silence and everything is absolutely pristine and perfect. That's not the nes. That'll be the Metzius La'asid Lava. The nes is that I sit and I do the mitzvah, Kil Chasa, I learn the halachas, I know how to light, v'chulei. And then I show the Ribbon Shleilim, I believe in you, which means I know you believe in what's happening right now. There is no greater calming simcha, because it's a high that doesn't have a low. Many of our spiritual highs have lows. This is the type of high that doesn't have a low. It's mala haaretz kinyanecha. You made a kinyan of godliness at that moment in your home. Ishu beisa. At that moment, it's the opposite of what the Rebbe said. Sha'olam himiktane amana al kem hen tzrimchim l'tainis dahainu avodas kashas. It's exactly the opposite over here. And then the end over here, the Rebbe says this line, which really sticks out and sums up the whole thing. Ksheyesh katnus ufgam ba'emuna, when there's small-mindedness and there's a blemish in emuna, צריכים לעשות עבודות קשות. It's called a pgam. It's called a blemish if I think that the house has to be perfect. It's actually the opposite. It could be it's a minoser kankanim. It could be it's a little bit of oil that's there. But that's actually all that's needed to rekindle the light of the home. I don't have to tell any of you. It's all over the world. The fact that there's, there should be a bracha, halal with them. Don't quote me, I'm not paskening anything. There should be halal. Oh, I have to be careful. It's happened before. It's not a good thing. They should say a bracha, halal with a bracha every single day that there's shalom bayis in a home. And shalom bayis doesn't mean that you each, not that we Yidden are into breakfast in bed, but whatever the equivalent of that is, okay? That you each surprise each other with a gift out of nowhere. That's not what it's about. It's not the miracles. It's mitzvahs ner Chanukah ishu beis. So it's just accepting that this mitzvah over here is everything that I need right now to be plugged in to how much Hashem believes in me. When a home looks like that, our children grow up calm inside. Their relationship to Simcha and Kedusha is a calm relationship. Calming relationship. I remember one time a friend of mine came here for Shabbos, and he was feeling it. It was all so strong. He took it on, and he was flying high. And he wore a Yerushalmi kapota on Shabbos. You know what a Yerushalmi one is? It's the white with the stripes, right? So let's say my friend's name was Zevil. So he came to give shalom to Rebbe, and Rebbe said to him, Zevil, even the Yerushalmis don't wear these kapotas anymore, right? His wife is eternally thankful for that statement because the shalom bayis that was enabled after the calming simcha was now invited into their home changed the game of their home. It doesn't mean you're not supposed to aspire to fill your heart with kedusha, but we're trying to aspire to fill our heart with shalom bayis type of kedusha, which is what Hanukkah is all about. Shalom bayis type of kedusha is a calming one. It's one that seeps in very, very smooth, deep, and benaicha, and with shalva. On Shabbos we say menucha shlema she'ata rotzeba. It's a very Shabbos-dik type of menucha. Here we're going to say it's a very Shabbos-dik type of simcha what Hanukkah is bringing down. Because other than that, I don't really have to do almost anything during Hanukkah. But what I want to say is that when I've mekabeled on myself that is my Yiddishkeit, I start seeing Godlus Haboira wherever I look. I start feeling humbled by almost every interaction I have with other people. You see, if the only way that I feel I'm in Godless is if I run to the tzaddikim, and this is like, it's a holy taiva, but it still may be even something a bit pagum, that only when I run to see how they're lighting, then I feel like I'm plugged in. I can't bring my wife and children into the Beit Shemayah. My brother-in-law just did one of his kids, but that's for another story. Hashem, he should have refuah shlema. Yakir Shlomo ben Tanya Malka. But that's not how we live. That's not our mitzias. It has to be that we believe so strongly that the way that the light of Pnimius for our door is being normal and being calm. And through that calmness, there's a Pesach Hashar to actually be as fiery as possible, but not the other way around. Not the other way around. Because when that's how I live and that's how I approach Kedusha, like I said, then wherever I go, suddenly all these different situations in life that feel like, I can't do this. No, I can do this. I suddenly, the notion of what I'm bound by, what limits me, changes. Aaron HaKohen was the master of Shalom Bayis. You all know that he was running around making Shalom Bayis between couples. He wasn't going to husband and wife telling them, your wife is a tzadikis elyoina, kodesh kodashim, or telling the wife, your husband is a tzaddik yesod olam. He would probably whisper to them, you know how much space your husband, your wife has in their heart? They're just learning how to access it better. But Gevalt, do they want to be there for each other? That's how Aaron HaKohen was going around doing shalom bayis. There's a famous Torah from the Alexander Rebbe. He says like this. This is a beautiful Torah about what Aaron HaKohen does, and this is the light of the menorah as well. And I think that when I am plugged into a calm experience around the Neiros, I quietly start to see the shinuim, the differences in my life, the different things that I could start to be plugged into. Aaron HaKohen, it says about him, Vayas Kain Aaron, very famous Rashi, Melamed Shelo Shina. Everyone's wondering, what does it mean that Aaron HaKohen, it says about him that when he lit the candles in the Beis HaMikdash, that he didn't deviate, Melamed Shelo Shina. It's such a big holy thing that Aaron HaKohen didn't deviate. The Torah says, Vayas Kain, he did as he was told, Shkoyach Aaron HaKohen. I want to have every morning that I wake up and say brachas, Vayas Ken Shlomo Melamed Shelo Shina, right? What's the big vart that I didn't deviate and do something that I wasn't supposed to do? So the Alexander Rebbe said like this, and I think this is everything we're tying in together. We want to become people that believe in small, gradual, holy, and healthy, and smooth changes in life. That's what we want to be. And hopefully that's who we are. In order to believe that change is possible and that growth is possible, it'll probably come more from a Piasetzner visualization of Atzlacha of davening than the other way. Probably. So Aaron HaKohen, it says by him, Vayas Kain Aaron. Aaron HaKohen was a yes person. He made you believe that through calming small changes, it's possible to grow. That's what Aaron HaKohen did. Vayas Kain. He was a yes person, right? Vayas Kain Aaron. Rashi says, teaches us, Melamed, Shelo Shina. He changed the people of Lo, the no people. People that said, this is who I am, and it's going to be like this forever. Aaron HaKohen looked at them and said, I'm a yes person. I'm going to teach you how to believe that all the lo, all the no moments in your life can be changed to yes. But it's not necessarily about Gilgul Sheleg in the snow, to do tikkunim. It's not like the Alter Rebbe brings down one thing about Pei Dalatanias. It's not about these crazy avodos kashos that Rabbi Nachman was speaking about. It is the most calming, soothing, gradual moment of Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim. All the low moments in our life, all the no moments, Aaron HaKohen comes to our home and he kindles the menorah with me when I don't look at my wife and in my mind I'm saying, if only you'd start going to all the shiurim that I've been telling you to go, then we'd have a chance to feel the Shekhinah in the home. I can't believe I even said those words, but there are people that actually feel like that. And mechila, even from women that have all these different hasagas on what their husbands need to be in order to be real balabatim, mentions also slowly, le'at, le'at. And then Aaron HaKohen comes and light the menorah and says, this is a house. This is the house that understands what the light of Hanukkah is about. This is a house that understands what the light of the menorah is really all about. And then when you look back at your Hanukkah, all the Hanukkahs that you had in your home that you built, and you had to choose a song for the soundtrack, I do that a lot with the Chevra. Like, go back into your memories, sometimes this could be actually really scary exercise for people. If you could play a song, choose a niggun, of what Yantiv was like growing up, what song would it be? And you have plenty of Chevra that would definitely choose Al Eila Ani Buchia as like a soundtrack for their experiences. Al Eila Ani Buchia is from Eicha. It's basically, this is what I'm crying over. Eini Yardamayim. But it could be, you could choose Lemancha. I think that's a good niggun. It could be, but like I guess the best hachana for Hanukkah is what do I want the soundtrack to be? Not that I have to play it, but what do I want the soundtrack to be that my children are going to recall when they get older? What would they say the niggun is? That is the soundtrack of what it was like benching licht. Not necessarily what's played in the house at that moment. And when you set that, that's already a way to go weiter. But I want to end with the soundtrack. I told you we're going to start with Eretz Yisrael, but end with Eretz Yisrael. Because Hanukkah is the Yantiv that happened in Yerushalayim. It happened in Modi'in. It happened, my wife grew up in Moshav Matisyahu. You understand? She grew up in a place called Moshav Matisyahu. I live on Rehov Matisyahu. I just thought about this. All right? I live on Rehov Matisyahu HaKoyen. I grew up on Highland, the corner of Highland and Oakwood or Rosewood, Clinton. Right. My children are growing up on Rehov Matisyahu HaKoyen.
And I live on Rehov Har Sinai.
And my mom lives in Rehov Har Sinai. What's that?
My sister was in
Modi'in. These are real things, right? Eretz Yisrael's Shalom Bayis is something else. Let me tell you about the highest Hanukkah. I wouldn't exactly say it's calming, but definitely a perspective of Hanukkah that I never, ever in my million years could have dreamed of having. A few years ago, on Hanukkah, Chabad of, I think it's Chabad of Talbiya. I don't want to mess it up. I think it's Chabad of Talbiya hired me to come and play for one of the nights that they do a big candle lighting in the Mamila walkway. You know, in the beginning of the strip on the left side, there's a menorah, right? Did you ever notice that? Right when you start walking over there, there's a big menorah there. And Chabad does a wonderful candle, like a really special, every night of Hanukkah, of course they do. Everywhere they do. In Yerushalayim they're doing it. I want to give a l'chaim to all the shluchim, should have infinite kochos to keep on doing their shlichus with such sweetness. We had such a Yutes Kislev by us, Baruch Hashem, and the shul was our first, like I said, it was a bikurim of Yutes Kislev. We had such a beautiful farbringen by us. I'm so proud of my chevra. It was so amazing. And the next night I was by Rav Ginsburg, which was just, whatever, I'm going off, but just, you start thinking about this, the lights, like it spreads, you know. My visual of Hanukkah, of my soundtrack of a certain part of my life was every year I would go up to San Francisco, and I was living in Los Angeles, remember? You came with me one year. Every year I'd go up to San Francisco to do the lighting for Chabad of San Francisco, Rabbi Yosef Langer. I think he still does it there, this massive menorah in Union Square, like a real center place in San Francisco. And I was so, my first meeting, my first time I got there, I was a little bit confused because I saw a Chabadsker hold up a huge sign that said, "Honored Jerry, do pot." So I was, okay, wait a second, I have to learn, okay, honored Jerry. Who's Jerry? Garcia, of course, Jerry Garcia, like Lahavdil Elf Avdolas. Pot, Rashi Tevis, put on tefillin. It took me a while to figure out, that's how they got them into the, right? It was a totally different experience I never saw anything like this before. And who was the guest of honor to do Hadlakas HaMenorah that year? Carlos Santana. If you know, brother Carlos, right? Completely wacky experience, but what I saw from the stage was that Rabbi Langer has a torch. Today they would never let this because of safety hazards. But back then, they did it. He had mamish a torch, and they gave out thousands of candles to the crowd. And you saw how he started the torch, and he gave it to one person, and you see tunnels, you see just rivers of candles forming in front of your eyes. It was an amazing visual, beautiful visual. They have such sadishma, it's an amazing thing. So anyway, to get back to the Chabad, is that they had me, I think must have been like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, Hanukkah. And they said, we want you on the third night of Hanukkah. It's actually the same thing's happening this year. Because I'll be doing it Tuesday night. I'm going to take Bina and the kids to the first night that I'm really back. I'm doing it again this year. They said, we're doing Tuesday night, the third night of Hanukkah. We want you to be there. And it's a special night where every night they honor someone else. The third night they were honoring victims of terror. Families of victims of terror. Now, okay. Wake up in the morning. Mamish v'hahar ashen kulo. You can't see anything, especially where we live with the fog, and it's hailing and it's pouring and it's raining. So I'm thinking, okay, this was machshava toiva, Kadosh Baruch Hu mitzaref l'maisa. It was a good kavanah to do it. It's not going to happen because it's the coldest it's been by us, and it was really, in Eretz Yisrael, it rains. When it rains, sometimes it comes down really, really hard. A lot of hail. And it's going like this, like 10, 11 a.m., 12 a.m. It's supposed to be there at 4:30. So I called the Rebbitzin at about 11:30. I'm like, yeah, it's probably not happening, right? She's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's freezing outside, and I don't think Efrat and Yerushalayim have different weather conditions. It's the same thing. He says, no, we're still on. I'm like, Rebbitzin, okay, whatever you say, I'll show up. It gets worse and worse and worse. Then there's like all these hodaot come from the Moatzah, like all minyanim. They say there shouldn't be minyanim in shuls because it's a danger hazard. Just daven at home. Something. It was crazy. Everyone's freaking out. I called the Rebbitzin at 2:30. It's like, Rebbitzin, it's getting worse. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll see you at 4:30. Like this Azus de Kedusha type of, like. So I told Bina, I was like, listen, I'm gonna leave an hour and a half early. I'm gonna drive really, really slowly, because when you drive from Efrat to Yerushalayim, you go on Kvish Minarot, the tunnel road. And until you get there, you have to, basically it goes through a lot of fog because you're driving on a mountain. I'm gonna go really slowly. She really didn't want me to go. I also told her, listen, I'm gonna get a call by the time I'm in the car that it's called off anyway, because they realize no one's gonna come out. Didn't happen. I'm waiting for the call. Didn't happen. I'm driving slowly. I get to the Mamila parking lot. There's not a car in the parking lot. Now, Mamila parking lot, usually you can't find a spot. There wasn't a car there. The shomer, the guy that opens the gate to let you in, he says, מה אתה מחפש פה? Right? I was like, אני באתי להופיע הדלקת נרות. He's like, זה לא פורים היום, תפסיק עם השטויות. Right? It's not Purim. I'm like, no, I'm telling you that. He's like, טוב, אתה משוגע, לך על זה. I was the only car there. I come up there, there's not a person. Not only is there not a person, even the Chabad rabbi and his Rebbitzin weren't there. But there was a microphone waiting for me. I'll never forget this. There's a microphone waiting, and I said, I'm either gonna feel very, very stupid, or this is gonna be a gewaldige tale that I don't know how it's gonna end. But what do I care? So I have a picture of me. I'm covered from head to toe. My fingers were so frozen that I cut holes in the top of the glove so I could use it to pick with the guitar. Put my fingers on the guitar. I'm shaking, freezing. And I'm not exaggerating. This next piece sounds like a movie. Eretz Yisrael, these things happen all the time. I see that there are few families that they weren't wearing kippahs, but they started coming out, and they were like hugging each other and holding each other, and they started coming closer and closer to where I was. There was one family, it's just me and a microphone and nobody there. 1, 2, there were 5 families that came. They were shaking. I thought, you're crazy. You could stay home. I asked one of them, איך קוראים לך? I never forget this. He says, אני אבא של Hadar. He says, who's Hadar? He says, Hadar Cohen. She was a chayelet Mishmar HaGvul that was killed 3 weeks before, right there by the Shar into the old city. I asked another person there, ואיך קוראים לך? אני אימא של... And they'd say, I'm the mother of so-and-so. There was no one else that came besides the families that came to want to give kavod and light to Nebuch, to their families that were killed in terror attacks. Eventually the Chabad rabbi and Rebbitzin showed up, but for a while it was just me in the pouring rain, freezing cold, with a bunch of these families that suffered terror attacks in their life. And I'm not exaggerating that if I had to give a soundtrack, it would be the crisp of a fire, that crisp burning of a fireplace, because it was so warm. There was nothing, I've never ever tasted anything warmer in my life. I forgot how cold it was also because my fingers were completely numb. Anyway, I couldn't play. It was so cold outside, and inside it was so warm when I saw Yidden, that no matter what is going on in the world, no matter, especially in their lives are such a storm. And I said to myself, if they can schlep out here with their pain, some of these families just came out of Shloshim, if they can schlep out in their pain, and they can come and light the menorah, bechatzros kodshecha, literally, bechatzros kodshecha, I could get over a little cold night. It ended up, for me, out of any Hanukkah Chagiga I was ever part of, that was the highest. And it's not because everyone sang every nigun and we were davening like we were Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash. I don't even know if half the families were even singing along with me. Better yet, dancing. But it was a calm moment of being around the menorah together. In that situation, obviously a little bit more extreme, because it tugs upon the most sensitive place of the Nishmas Am Yisrael. Each of us have that in our lives. But when we have enough guts to just stand by the menorah and light it, somehow the soundtrack we're all going to be choosing will be the most calming, soothing soundtrack. One that we would be happy if it showed up on any shuffle. It's not just for this time of year or that time of year. It's one that's basically the soundtrack of our neshamas. This is the light of Hanukkah. This is the light of Yemei Hodah. This is the light of Godliness, of Emunah. Havu Godel Lelekenu. And I give us all a bracha, Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach, b'schus the Chayalim HaKadoshim that I started with, that are right now, like I mentioned, protecting my wife and children, and protecting us here as well. They should join together with all the Chayalim and Chayalot in Tzivus Hashem, and bring of the Besora that we started with, that our shul has, that this Kehila Kedosha has, and here the final Besora come from Eliyahu Hanavi, saying, Yiddelach, you finally chapped what it means. You finally chapped what it means to feel godly. You finally chapped, you finally allowed yourselves to believe in you a fraction of how much the Ribbon Shalom believes in you. This is the Torah of Eretz Yisrael. This is the Torah of the Yantiv of Eretz Yisrael of Chanukah. It's the Torah of this Shabbos table, which I know is a Shabbos table that is a Yerushalmi Shabbos table, a Yerushalmi home. And what a zchus it is to be with all of you, to have my mother here, to be with just Mevakshim and Mevakshos, and I hope and pray that the next time we see each other, it's on my home turf. Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Thank you so much, everyone. You can find it. L'chaim.
Beautiful.